One of the worst things about sensorimotor OCD for me was actually this feeling of being completely on my own. I think when you're really struggling with something like sensorimotor OCD, often you don't want to open up to other people about it. And even if you do, people really don't tend to understand it. Of course, if you're not struggling with these things, it is quite hard to understand when you approach somebody and you say, hey, I'm really struggling with my swallowing, or I'm really struggling with my breath. People kind of look at you like, what? Why would you worry about that? That's not something to be worried about. There's real problems, or there's actual anxiety to be concerned about, or depression. Why are you worried about this? And it's a very horrible thing, actually, that if you go to somebody and you express to them that you're really struggling with something, and then that person doesn't really get it at all, or even they kind of play it down. They tell you, this isn't something to be worried about. That can make you feel even more frustrated and even more alone. And I think this is part of the reason for why sensorimotor OCD at times can feel so difficult. You don't really want to talk about it. You don't really want to share about it because you think you're going to be misunderstood. You kind of think that other people won't get it, or maybe or worse than that, maybe they're going to judge you. Maybe they're going to think this or that about you because of this. And, you can end up feeling very, very alone. Very much that there's nobody else out there who's really going to understand this. And certainly that was the case for me. I felt like no one was ever going to understand this. And in fact, at the time when I was really struggling in my kind of late teenage years and in my 20s, at that time, I didn't even know that it was OCD, let alone something known as sensorimotor OCD. And I really felt like, I must be the only person in the world who would be struggling with something like this. It didn't make sense to me at all that other people might struggle with it. It just seemed like such a peculiar, such a bizarre thing to get stuck on. And I was really judging myself about it, really beating myself up, giving myself a really, really hard time, getting caught up in all sorts of negative stories about it. And of course, kind of piling the pressure on in that way, giving myself a hard time just made it worse, made the awareness even more stubborn, and it kind of led to me feeling even more alienated, even more kind of lonely in my own life. And so, I think sensorimotor OCD, it doesn't get enough recognition actually for just how difficult it really can be and how alone people can feel with it. And so I think part of today's message is just that, to really know that you're not alone. This is something that many people do struggle with, unfortunately, in silence sometimes. And, I think it's so important that we realize that this is something that I think more and more people are gradually realizing that perhaps they struggle with in some way, and are actually, reaching out for help or going to different communities, speaking to people about it. And I think that's great. I think it's really important. And I think it can help us to realize that we're really not alone in this. And actually, this is a big part of the reason for why I created my 12-week program for sensorimotor OCD. A big part of it is community, to help you to realize that there are other people out there who are struggling. And therefore, built into the program are monthly group coaching sessions where you can meet with and talk to other people who might be struggling with sensorimotor OCD too. It's a 12-week structured program that includes videos, worksheets, meditations, and it's really based on my own personal experiences struggling with sensorimotor OCD over the years. But it's also based around acceptance commitment therapy, exposure, and much more. So if you're interested in doing that, you can get a free discovery call with me by heading over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. So many thanks. I really hope that you enjoyed that one. If you have any questions at all, as always, do please let me know. And I will see you next time. This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.